Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to my Sunday Reflections. I'm Elsa Marie De Silva, founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation. Sunday Reflections is my live cast where I invite one of my guests to from the various networks that I'm part of or people that I come across who I find interesting. And I invite them to come and share with me their thoughts on how they are coping during this time. What is it that they do, what motivates them, and interesting aspects of their life. And this evening, joining me from Gurgaon is Dr. Poonam De Souza. Good evening, Poonam. How are you?
Hi Elsa, good evening. I'm doing very well and yeah, having my evening cup of tea. How are you doing?
Cheers. I'm having my
Cheers.
yeah. I mean, it's a relaxed Sunday afternoon for me. I'm trying to slow down, especially because it's been a hectic year, believe it or not. And I'm just trying to pace myself till the Christmas holidays, and I can't wait for that. It's now like one and a half. I'm counting it as 1.5 months to go. How about you?
Yes, I am very much looking forward to the year end. It's been it's been a challenging year for all of us. I think starting this year, March 2020 is when we were struck with the pandemic. And I think ever since then, it has really upended lives of people all around. And it's it's been interesting times, challenging times, and although things have started to ease down back a bit, but the pandemic still continues. And so I'm really looking forward to maybe just, taking some time off towards the end of the year. Yeah. And really hoping that I can take some time to unwind and, spend some time with my family, friends. Yeah.
So you're a Mumbai girl who's now living in Gurgaon. You're also a general physician, so you're a medical doctor by training and has made a career switch to being a business leader in the corporate sector. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how did you choose medicine as your profession?
Okay. That actually brings a lot of memories. So I'll start by telling a bit about myself and where I grew up. Um, so Elsa, as you know, somewhere in the 15th century, the Portuguese landed along the western coast and specifically in Goa, right? And somewhere around the same time, they also landed along the suburbs of Mumbai, along the western coast of Mumbai, in this suburban town of Bassein. And this place has an ancestral Portuguese heritage and lineage. So, as a native of Bombay, that's where I am from. And growing up, I have had strong women in my family. My mother, my grandmother, and my godmother. So these were three women who I have seen in my family, and I saw them doing everything on their own. And I think that instilled a sense of fierce independence in me since childhood. Um, as a student during school, I topped my class. I also excelled in sports. I I am an alumni of St. Anthony's Convent School and DG Ruparel College of Science, Mumbai, and I featured in the state level merit lists. And needless to say, that's how I stepped onto the road to becoming a medical doctor. As a hindsight, I think that was my first move to get out of my comfort zone, or that reflects how I get out of comfort zones, because I had no background of physicians in my family, and I am the only doctor in my entire family. I cracked the medical entrance exam and I secured a seat of merit in a prestigious government school of medicine, Grant Medical College, Mumbai. That's where I started my medical education. And about a year into it, I had to change my school of medicine because there were some changes in the medical education system. But I secured another seat of merit in another heritage school of medicine. That's BJ Medical College and Sir David Sassoon Hospital, Pune. So that's where I completed my medical studies and I became a general physician. So yeah, that's a bit about me, where I'm from, and my and how I got into the medical profession and became a doctor.
Tell us a bit about Baseen. Baseen is now called Vasai, and people have forgotten that it is one of the, original indigenous spots where the locals, the original people of, this part of, I can't even say Bombay because Bombay was seven islands, and then there's a lot of reclaimed land. But what is now considered Bombay? So tell us a little bit about Baseen and growing up in Baseen.
Well, I think it has a lot of resonance to probably what Goa is, except that it's, I think, much more quieter, and it's a quiet town along the suburbs. And my memories of growing up there is the beach, the going by the beach and just spending my time by the beach. I I remember I used to cycle every day to school because I think, and that's where probably I owe a bit of my interest in sports and athletics to my dad, because he made sure that I cycled every day to school. So my memories of growing up in Basine is that I used to cycle every day to school. And then growing up, there was also playing a lot of sports, whether I was the running champion of my school. I was the long jump champion of my school, and I used to play badminton with my father. So those are my memories of growing up there. And
I
also,
remember
I
a
think
lot of chiku trees.
chiku trees. Yes, yes. And I think the most beautiful time of the year would be the year end, which is of course Christmas. So you have lovely lights and the atmosphere of Christmas, which is of course one of the most beautiful times of the year.
In a way,
And
it's like
a lot of
Bandra.
movies have been shot there, you know that.
In a way, it's like Bandra in the suburbs, right? Even though
Absolutely.
Bandra is a suburb, it's like further down the coast. So you must miss the beach in Gurgaon because there's no beach over there.
You're absolutely right. So, yeah, so one of the other memories is that when I am in Bombay, of course, I would love to go sit by the beach, or it's either go run by the beach. So I miss the beach a lot. But of course, I have these videos that I make. So whenever I miss the beach, I either just listen or look at the videos. And yeah, so I think that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to once the crisis is over.
So, as a trained medical doctor, when you saw this crisis unfolding, what did you think? What were your thoughts?
Hmm. So there are a few things. I think I think it's ironical how it took a tiny virus for us to realize the importance of few basic things like hygiene, right? So when the pandemic came about, the measures which were being emphasized, whether it's by the WHO or the United Nations, these were things like wash your hands, don't sneeze without covering your mouth, or when you cough, cover your mouth. I think these are basic hygiene practices which are anyway essential as a part of how one would be expected to kind of maintain these hygiene practices, right? But it took a virus for us to really realize that and enforce that. So I think that was one thing which was really, you know, it was really ironical. I think it was, and it also kind of reflects and shows that um, you know, how change can just come about suddenly. I think this, the other aspect to this is there are, I mean, we talk about changes, we talk about, that change is the only constant of life, but then changes can come in different forms. But I think this is one change where that element of choice was not there. I think it was forced on everyone. And I think there was no one that kind of escaped or was left out from feeling the repercussions of this pandemic. And the other thing which kind of struck me and which I've been thinking about is the immense pressure on medicine and science for the invention of a vaccine at this point in time. Oh, and also the importance of research in the development and identification of new treatments in healthcare. So, yeah, so these are some of the reflections when this came about.
We have Venkatesh who's asking, as a physician and leader, how important do you see having insurance for mental health? Even with post-pandemic, we need help as it has changed the lives of many. And what tips would you give people to recover from it?
Mhm. Recovering from the mental health effects.
I
Okay.
think he's talking about mental health, yeah. Building mental health resilience.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, talking about it, I think when you talk about other diseases, right? When you talk about diabetes or you talk about heart disease, I think you have insurances which are covering these kind of diseases. And also when you look at it, you tend to differentiate the disease from the person. So when you look at a person suffering from diabetes, or you look at a person suffering from heart disease, or it could be any other kind of an illness, you look at the disease. But I think when it comes to a mental health condition, or when it comes to a mental health disease, when we talk about the stigma that's associated with it, it's because you find it difficult to differentiate the disease from the person. You kind of make it about the person. And I think that's the first step where we really need to drive that change as a part of having insurance also cover the mental health conditions and the mental health diseases. And as far as recovering from it, I think that's a process. So especially in the setup of the pandemic, right? It's a shocking event. It's a crisis, and there has been a lot of research. There have been a lot of studies, a lot of data which have shown that any kind of event which is shocking to this scale, or which is really kind of mm, traumatic to this extent, can create scenarios which relate to post traumatic stress related symptoms, or post traumatic stress related disorder kind of a symptoms. And I think it is that there has been a lot of research that was published in the Lancet as well, that the last time we had a pandemic that struck, I think it was the Spanish flu. It There was a lot of post-traumatic stress-related disorder and stress-related symptoms which were noticed in general public as well as healthcare professionals. And dealing with it is something which takes, it takes, it's a process. It takes effort. There are interventions, there are therapies available. I think the first step is how you really in kind of cultivate the practice of taking care of your mental health in day-to-day life. And that's where we talk about having that mental resilience or stress resilience, is because when you take care of mental health and when you are really practicing that as a part of your daily routine, it makes you better equipped to deal with any such kind of a crisis or a situation that may come about as an untoward event at some point in time. So I think adapting certain strategies for mental health help you recover. Like few things which I particularly find very effective and useful for myself, which have helped me to cope through this and which I have found useful, are things like practicing various forms of self love, self care. The second most important thing is how do you practice just valuing yourself, respecting yourself. And the third thing is, how do you utilize different or use different methods to cope with stress effectively? And then when we talk about coping with stress, there can be short term methods which will be really helpful for you right in the moment, like things like deep breathing exercises. So deep breathing is something which really helps you in the moment because it kind of stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, that helps you relax, think rationally. But as a part of implementing long term strategies, things like meditation, exercise, and having a good healthy lifestyle is something that really helps. So I think overall a combination of all of this is something which can help recover when we talk about mental health, because it's it's no single strategy that can work. It really has to be a combination of different methods that can work. And this is, when I talk about this is of course like a broad overarching theme that I'm talking about. But of course, on a case to case basis, it can be more personalized as well, depending on what is the specific case or what is the specific problem or challenge that we are dealing with.
Great. So we have Priyanka Kalaso saying hi, and then she says, liked it when you said it is a process. And it really is a process. We all have to work at it. Some days are better than other days, and you have to learn to listen to your body, listen to, or figure out what your energy levels are and course correct accordingly. So thank you for sharing those tips. I want to go back to when you said that you picked medicine and it was challenging. You didn't know anything about it as a career because you didn't have any role models, reference points within your family, and yet you went through the process of becoming and training as a doctor. And then, after doing that for a few years, you made a career shift again to join the corporate sector as a business leader. Can you share like what motivated you and why did you do it? And how easy was it to make that shift?
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, being a physician, I started my journey close to the practice of medicine and patients, and that's what I did over the years for some years. And I loved every bit of it, and it's something which is an enriching experience in my life. I learned a lot, and I think one of the most important attributes that it has helped me understand is the value of empathy. So it's something which has been very, very, I would say, insightful for me as an experience, and I still love it. At the same time, I am also a person who likes to approach different challenges, and I'm always looking for environments that are dynamic, that can stretch my abilities to achieve more. I think I think as physicians, we are trained in the diagnostic, therapeutic, and management aspects of patient care, not so much on the conceptual or practical aspects of leadership. It was during the course of when I was practicing medicine is where I realized that this is something that I want to do as a part of as a part of you know tapping into that potential of mine and realizing my full potential. And it was for that reason that I moved or transitioned from practicing medicine into the pharmaceutical industry business world. And regarding your second question, how easy it was, well, it wasn't easy at all. It was a whole new set of challenge and a whole new experience, a completely different experience for me. But I think also something that again helped me and shaped me a lot, because it it helped me to understand the real importance of how relevant enough a healthcare company is in the daily practice of medicine, and that what I do is meaningful and valuable. And it even helped me see my doctor colleagues and doctor friends in a very different perspective, and having practiced medicine myself, having been in the practice of medicine myself, and now moving and transitioning into the pharma business side of the world, it's it's like metaphorically the entire healthcare ecosystem is a matrix, and I it helped me see the different parts of those metrics, and it helped me gain perspective and a deeper insight into what I referred to earlier, the pressures on medicine in the for the development and research to identify new treatments. And it has been something which has been immensely, I would say, invaluable for me to gain that helicopter view as a vantage point, to gain that helicopter view of the healthcare ecosystem. Because I think today the healthcare scenario is much more complex, and with healthcare reforms or market forces which are transforming the way healthcare is delivered and being managed, I think this has been immensely invaluable for me to gain that complete holistic or a helicopter view of this entire matrix. Elsa, I cannot hear you. I have.
When
Oh,
one moves from one sector to another, what are the essential things that management needs to do in order to help you acclimatize to your new environment?
well, I think it was more about me acclimatizing to that new environment, right? And again, if you really look at it, it's about me again stepping into onto a road that was less traveled, and it was a change for me. And again, something that gave me the agility. I think it was my own agility of how I could really adapt to it, of how I could really acclimatize myself to it. It was it was a challenging territory, a new experience, but it gave me the opportunity to interact with multicultural people, multicultural stakeholders, global stakeholders. I think one of the most important things that I learned as a part of that journey, or as a part of acclimatizing myself through that, is is that life is a negotiation. Because I think everything we do in life is a series of negotiation, and negotiation was a huge part of what I had to do as a part of transitioning into this. And the other thing I learned as a part of adapting to that change is that when we talk about or think of negotiation, there's a there's a stereotype when it comes to negotiation that if one person wins, the other person loses. But I think that's not the case. I think great negotiation is all about effective collaboration. It's about understanding that there are multiple aspects with different people having different aspects of the same problem. So that helps to gain perspective, because it's really about how you can solve that problem. And the way I mean, as a doctor, we have a responsibility to educate people, to to make to make sure that we are making an impact, and problem solving. And I could do that as a part of my. I could. I think what was really good is that it was a different experience. It helped me evolve myself. At the same time, I was very relevant to my field. I was very relevant to where I came from, and so that is something which really helped me to acclimatize myself rather than somebody helping me to do that. I think that it was more about me taking the initiative and owning it myself.
You know, today diversity and inclusion is a very key aspect in corporate, and we are talking about it in every sector practically. And diversity doesn't only mean gender, it means all kinds, like different castes, different age groups, and you know, the intersection of the kind of work and training that you've had. Do you feel that you have an edge due to your medical training?
Yes, absolutely. I think when you speak about diversity and the multiple aspects of diversity that you speak about, I think one another thing that I would like to add to it is also the diversity of thought, right? The diversity of perspectives that people bring to the table. So I think it definitely gives me an edge because, like I said, and I referred to earlier, it's the entire ecosystem of healthcare is so complex. It's like a matrix. And as a physician practicing medicine, I was one I was one part of that matrix. But having had this experience through my journey, it's something that enabled me to see the whole ecosystem through a vantage point that definitely I think gives me an edge.
Great. And what about your sports training? Do you think that how does that help you? Your long relationship with sports. How does that help you in the corporate world?
Okay, so I think with sports, I had I had my teacher in school who I still meet him when I come to Bombay. His name is Gregory Sir, as I call him, and I think sports is something which has really been it has taught me the importance of determination, dedication, and I think really being committed to a goal. And I think these things are very important as a part of doing what you do, even doing what I do, doing what I would do anywhere else. And I think in sports, you talk about resilience as well, right? So I think extrapolating the same concept of resilience, what we talk about resilience as an important trait or a quality that the leader needs to have. So I can draw a lot of synergies from what I learned from sports into helping me what I do that I currently.
I wanted to check with you. What advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
That's an interesting question. Okay, my 16-year-old self. Okay, so I think it would probably be where I I've always been a person who has had a sense of independence, and I've always chosen to take the road less traveled, face the unknown, and I think the only thing which I would probably do differently, or the advice that I would give to myself as a 16-year-old, is that maybe I think I take it easy sometimes on myself, because I think sometimes I am a little hard on myself. And I think maybe the only advice I would give to myself as a 16-year-old would be that maybe I just need to probably take things easy a bit, just you know, let my hair down and probably enjoy life a bit more.
You now are also trying to build your social media influencing role, right? On Instagram. I see you very often over there. How do you what first of all, what advice would you give people? Because a lot of people don't really feel comfortable putting themselves out on social media. And second is, how do you balance that social media presence with your corporate responsibilities, where often corporates don't like you to have your own thought leadership out there. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So the first question, I think the first advice, or the first thing that comes, the two things, two main things. The first, I think, is authenticity. I believe in being true to what I stand for. So that's one thing which I believe in personally myself. So if you ask me what I would advise somebody else, that's what I would advise. I think it's about believing in what you stand for, and staying true to that is something which is very important. And the second is the responsibility of communicating accurate information. I think there's a lot of misinformation, and I think use of social media is a responsibility. So it's not just that because it's freely available that one can, communicate or put out anything that one would want to. But I think it's understanding the impact that you would be driving or having as a result of what you put out there. So the responsibility of communicating accurate information and preventing any kind of misinformation with the realization of how it could impact people who could be reading that is very important. So these are two things which I would advise because these are two things which I strongly believe in. Coming to your second part, how do I balance it? I think it's about my own thought leadership. And I think it's so long as I kind of maintain those boundaries and respect what I do as a part of my thought leadership, where it is about sharing my journey to help people and to help positively impact them as a part of my own individual thought leadership, and I can draw those boundaries and define those boundaries and respect both. I think that's something which is important as a part of balancing it out. And yeah, that's how I do that.
I'm glad. I'm glad you said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And at the UN, my colleague Jillian, who represents us, shared with us some campaign where it's called Take a Pause Before You Post. And, we should all take that pause before posting, because we have to think about what we are going to say if we are posting false news as well. Take a moment before we like something. But, not many of us do that. And it's a good practice to follow. So thanks for sharing about that. And last words from you. What kind of a world would you like for young girls growing up? And the reason why I'm asking you that is this month is November. We later in the month not celebrate. Unfortunately, we have to host campaigns like 16 days to end gender-based violence, and that starts on the 25th of November. But this whole month is a reminder that there's so much of violence out there, and it's often gender-based. So as a woman leader, what would you like the world to be for the young girls?
I think I would like the world to be where it is a safe place for women, of course. But at the same time, I think it's also important that it's a world where women really understand the importance of leadership in life. I think it's important that we teach. I would like a world where we teach young girls the importance and the value of leadership, because I think that's one thing which is lacking in the young girls at this point in time across spectrums of society, and not because they don't want to, but I think it's because of various stereotypes in the society. So I think, as a world that I would envision for girls in the future, it's a world where I would want women to take more leadership in life across spectrums of society, to have a vision for themselves, to take up space, to be financially independent, have an ambition. And that's the kind of world that I would really envision for the girls. And I think once we do that, that will naturally create an environment where it promotes a safe place for women, physically
Thank
as
you.
well as mentally.
Thank you, Poonam, for those wise words. And on that note, I'd really want to thank you for sharing your Sunday evening with us and, having this wonderful conversation. It's a way for me to get to know you better, and it really cheers myself up for the evening and sets the tone for my week. So thank you very much. And for all those watching, thank you so much for all your comments and likes. And please check out my past episodes. We've had amazing guests for the last so many weeks. I've been doing this since the time the pandemic started. It was a daily reflection, then moved to Sunday reflections after 50 episodes. So do check them out. Very, very interesting guests. So thank you once again, Poonam. Have a wonderful
Oh,
evening.
it was an absolute pleasure. I think you have a wonderful quality series of these that you have been doing, and I'm really glad that I could be a part of it with you. So thank you for having me over, and lovely to share my Sunday evening cup of tea with you and have this conversation and yeah, getting to know you as well.